You know, surely the Constitution takes precedence in matters like this, as you've highlighted, and we all know that. But doesn't it also make better sense for us to have all those 36 in place and all 36 having portfolios, and we should be talking about merger of ministries and agencies instead of having, well, maybe more ministers with some not having portfolios?
Well, you see, nobody can stand in for the president at this moment. I think when he took the oath of office, he swore to defend the Constitution and also to do all within his powers to see that he navigates Nigeria out of this quagmire. So we cannot insist on maybe our personal opinions that the president must toe our line because he is the chief captain, as I said before, and whatever happens in Nigeria, the buck stops at his own table. He has taken this risk in particular, and why can't we wait and see how it works? I believe that with time, the president might change. He is likely to change if our fortunes improve, or if the circumstances that influence his decision change. He will also change. I believe so.
The question then is, some people say that that part of the Constitution actually needs interpretation, and they believe that it should be tested, that it's not possible that one part of the Constitution would empower the president to create as many ministries and parastatals as he wants, and yet tie his hands, by demanding that he appoints one minister from each state. Do you think that they run contrary to each other?
Well, you see, in constitutional jurisprudence, no part of the Constitution is inferior to the other. So all the sections of the Constitution that guarantee presidential powers or all other powers are equal and should be treated as such, except when they say subject to the other provisions of the Constitution. That makes that provision inferior to the other sections of the Constitution. In this case, I do not see a conflict, but I do also think that there could be an improvement on Section 148, which has given that wide latitude. It depends on how one approaches this issue, because if I'm the president today, I might not be the president tomorrow. So that is why the framers of the Constitution allow that wide discretion to allow any occupant of the presidency and any occupant of the presidency that wide discretion to make his choices as to move the nation forward at any particular time. Because if we make it a straitjacket affair, it may hamstring the president and it will worry us. I think the framers of the Constitution were wise in doing so, especially given our peculiar circumstances as a nation from time to time.
Now, some people also ask, you have cited examples of countries where ministers were appointed without portfolios. How does it work?
Well, it has been working for them. For instance, in Israel, even in this 2015 we're talking about, there is a minister without portfolio. And as I told you, between 1950 and 2015, Israel has had not less than 58 persons appointed at various times as ministers without portfolio. And it has been working for them. It has also been working in Australia. Mind you, Australia also is a federation, just like Nigeria. And former Prime Minister Stanley Bruce was once a minister without portfolio. It has been working in these countries. And
I'm simply asking, in those countries, how do they function? Is it that the president assigns them special tasks, or they just hover around, or they sit in their homes and they're paid from there? What exactly happens?
Yes, you see, going back to our days when we were reading the government as a subject in secondary school, a cabinet performs several functions, not necessarily ministerial. For instance, they can sit in council and determine the policies, formulate the policies for a particular given government. And I believe that is the idea the president has. He has assembled a body of technocrats, well-experienced, well-exposed, and he thinks that he will sit with them in council from time to time to formulate policies for Nigeria. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they must be assigned portfolios to specific portfolios, but they can sit in council. And it will also not be out of place, as it's been done in those other countries, if the president delegates informally some of his functions to those non-portfolio ministers. So either way, I think it's a win-win situation for Mr. President.
Do you see protests trailing this? Do you, perhaps some politics, political backlash as a result of this decision?
Well, you see, I can't forecast because the president is a politician. As things stands out in this country now, he's the chief politician of Nigeria. He should have experience enough to know that, any state he takes will have some political undertones, or as some slangs we say, overtones. So he himself has judged it, and we will be in the best position to judge whether it's going to have some political backlash. But I do not see, personally speaking, if I should attempt a forecast, that there will be any serious political backlash. And I will also urge Nigerians to take it in good strides with the president, because these are very abnormal circumstances we are finding ourselves as a nation in.
Well, some may suggest that, well, if there are abnormal circumstances, it may be difficult for them to accept it just like that, because in some of those countries you mentioned, in the states, for instance, they don't have all these over-bloated ministries. The states, their federating units work. It's different from ours. We have a lot concentration of the center. It's completely reverse in some of those states. So is it a time that we actually revisit this? Because many will ask you, why do we have to have ministers with our portfolios all just go to the cabinet, formulate policies, when they could be useful to the states or regions if you resort to it?
Well, you see, there's one country I forgot to mention, India. India is more complex than Nigeria. It's more populous than Nigeria. We have also had a history of the Prime Minister appointing ministers without portfolio from time immemorial. And it has worked. I believe it will also work in Nigeria, if only with patience and good understanding, good cooperation, we will now say that, okay, Nigeria is in the middle of the sea. How do we move? So everybody will now begin to see himself as a patriotic Nigerian rather than as coming from a particular state.
No, but the other part of that, pardon me to button, the other part of that is because we face a huge economic challenge. And that's why this is popping up. Because many think that the states, the federating units, can do a lot more than they're doing right now because the potentials are there. We're not maximizing those potentials, and that's why we're between the rock and a hard place now.
Honestly, I agree with you. For instance, our dependence on oil has been on everybody's lips from the 1960s till now. And we have had green revolution introduced by President Shadari. We have had school to land introduced by Babangida. We have had a lot of other policies over time. But the political will to pursue these policies to the end has not been there. So I think it is high time we started going back to our roots. You can just imagine a state like Israel, which is on the desert, is now turned green. And Israel is not beggarly in terms of looking for finance here and there. So we should not encourage the dependence on oil again. We should encourage agriculture. And I think the president has that in mind too. I'm not his spokesperson. I do think I'm speaking as an objective Nigerian. But I do think that the president has that in mind with his expressions on shifting attention to agriculture and other industries rather than the oil industry. This thing cannot be oversaid or overemphasized because it has been said from the 1960s, successive governments have come in and nobody has taken these things seriously. It is high time we took them seriously.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sebastian Hon, Senior Advocate of Nigeria.
Thank you.
All right, and so there you have the views of Mr. Hon, about what he thinks of the president's thoughts while he spoke about those ministries, and then what he also suggests we do in order to face the current economic reality that we are faced. We will have more input on the same subject as the program progresses, but you have to just stay with us on that one. But in the meantime, we'll be flipping over to where Olumide Makola is for another look at the headlines.